what we know about children, and this does happen to adults a little bit too, but most often for children, their emotional stress comes out as physical behaviors, right? So you might see an increase in temper tantrums, you might see an increase in meltdowns. Sometimes you kind of see the opposite, and your child might have some separation anxiety, might always want to be with you, not wanting to sleep in their own bed, those kinds of things. Some kids get really quiet and shut down and maybe hole themselves up in a different room with the door closed. And the other thing to really look out for is irritability. Because unlike depression in adults, when we think about depression in adults, we think about being sad and down. And while that can be true for children as well, actually the number one symptom of depression in children and teenagers is irritability. So kind of keep that in mind. The other thing that can happen that I actually didn't put on my list is that sometimes kids can have somatic complaints like headaches and stomach aches. Those are the two kind of most common ones. So if your kiddos are complaining of, just abdominal pain or whatever it is, not that you shouldn't take that seriously, but kind of take a step back and think about, could there be something else that's contributing to this? We know children have difficulty identifying their feelings, right? So especially frustration and anger, they don't know how to label those. So they're going to need your help. Children often worry. Like I had mentioned, children's sadness can manifest as irritability. So keep an eye on that. And most children benefit from having a routine. So when we talk about worrying during COVID-19, so these are worries that are different from what kids potentially worried about 6 months ago, right? Some of them could be the same, but some of them are now faced with new situations, parents losing jobs, food insecurity, worrying about loved ones getting sick and dying. If parents are losing jobs, does that mean that you can still stay where you're living, or do you have to move somewhere else? Does that change? And I did put, and I don't know the answer to this, I have not seen any data, but whether children of those who are working on the front lines, if they have higher levels of anxiety, especially about people getting sick, and it wouldn't shock me for that to be true, but I do want to make sure that I emphasize there are no data behind this statement. This is just kind of my feeling. The other thing during COVID-19, sadness, depression. So our kids are not seeing their friends. This is especially important. And as you get older, middle school, high school, struggling with electronic learning, this distance learning stuff, there are a lot of factors that go into it. So making sure that you have the right equipment, making sure that all the links are working, making sure that you understand it. And this is especially hard for kids who have learning difficulties, right? So when our kids with learning difficulties are in school, they have specialists, right, who work with them on how to best work through their difficulties, maybe some tricks to make things a little bit easier. And unfortunately, as parents, most of us don't know those skills. So if your kiddo already struggles in school, this can be even more difficult for them. Some of our kids miss their teachers, and this is kind of more of like the elementary, kindergarten type stuff. Some of our kids miss being able to spend time with grandparents. If you are physically isolating, and maybe you see grandparents through a door or from the car, but not actually being able to be with them. And then not participating in after-school activities. So our kids who are involved in dance and sports and piano lessons, and my kids do karate and all of those things. Sometimes you can do it online. A lot of these places are doing Zoom lessons, but it's not the same as being in a room with everybody. So we are going to talk about a step-by-step way to talk to your child. So talking to your child about their feelings. This is not something that is exclusive to during the COVID-19 pandemic. These are steps that you can kind of put in the back of your head as ways that you can talk to your child about their feelings about anything. And you'll see the examples are related to COVID-19, but again, the 4 steps can be generalized to anything. So the first question is ask your child what they know about COVID-19. Use this opportunity to better understand your child's worry. Sometimes kids have these thoughts that, for example, if one person in our city is diagnosed with COVID-19, it means everybody is going to be diagnosed with COVID-19, and almost all of those people are going to die, right? So we know that that's not accurate, and that sounds really scary. And if that's what they're worrying about, we need to bring them back, give them correct information. So whether their worries are rational or not, those are still things that they're worrying about, right? And you can't tell other people how to feel. You can't tell them, oh, just don't worry about that, it's fine. But it's not, because they're worrying about it, right? So we have to really address these things. So when they tell you what they know about COVID-19, rational or not, kind of keep track of that in your head so that when you go to these next steps, you can address it. And sometimes some of those really big incorrect things, for example, one person getting sick in your community and wiping the entire community out, you can talk about that right in the moment, you know, and it's possible that your child was walking by and heard you on the phone with somebody talking about this, or her walking by and heard a news story and didn't quite understand what they were talking about, right? So that's the first step, is to figure out where is your child. Second thing is to validate their feelings, right? So child tells you, I'm just really scared that, you know, grandma is going to die from COVID-19. Grandma's old. They say this is affecting old people, and I'm really scared. And she is still leaving the house and going grocery shopping, and she won't wear a mask, whatever that is, right? So validate their feelings. So it sounds like you're worried that grandma could die from COVID-19. Kind of summarize what they're feeling. Give them a feeling. In this case, worry sometimes, and we'll talk about it's being scared or being happy or being lonely, whatever that is, name that feeling for them. And then we're going to move on in a second. But so another one might be, you're scared that we might run out of food this week, like we did last week, right? So a lot of families are facing food insecurity right now who have never experienced this in the past. And especially if you do really have a rough week and you do run out of food, that obviously is going to contribute to more worry from your kids about, well, it happened once, so maybe it could happen again. Step 3 is normalize their feelings, right? So it would be really scary to think that grandma could die for COVID-19. Like, that makes sense, right? It makes sense that you would worry about running out of food because it's happened to us before. Some other things, maybe not necessarily related to COVID-19, but if you're talking more generally to your kids, this is a really good place to allow them to be angry. So for example, they're really upset because their best friend canceled plans with them, and they're really upset about that, right? So you could go in and normalize their feelings and say, I would be really angry and really hurt if my best friend did that to me. Because now you're opening the door for them to express negative feelings, right? And they're like, yeah, I am. I'm really mad, or I'm really hurt. So that's just kind of one of those ways to open up the communication with your kids. And it's okay for them to have negative feelings. It's okay for all of us to have negative feelings. It's what we do with those feelings that's important. And finally, problem solve. And remember, you can always come back with ideas about ways that you can address your children's concerns. You don't have to think on the fly. So brainstorm, especially things that you can control, right? So what are the things that we can control right now? Doesn't feel like there's a lot of them, but there are definitely some. So hand washing, right? Talking to your kids about the importance of that 20-second scrub, either singing or counting, whatever that is. Physically distancing. So, leaving 6 feet in between you and somebody else. If y'all are outside, maybe and neighbors come over, making sure that you're still maintaining that distance. And I had somebody tell me this, and it really makes sense. Instead of thinking about socially distancing, where you might think about actually emotionally distancing yourself, think of this more as physically distancing. We don't want you to emotionally distance. Connecting with others via FaceTime. So, you're worried about grandma. Well, hey, maybe we should call grandma and see how she's feeling. Or, plan that we're going to call grandma every night before we go to bed. The hard thing right now, though, is that we can't promise our children that grandma's not going to get sick, right? Unfortunately, it's the reality. And you can't promise your children anything that you cannot carry through with 100% certainty, because the next time you promise, they're not going to buy it, right? And so being honest about that, I can't promise you that this isn't going to happen, but what are things that we can do? We can call grandma and make sure she's washing her hands or wearing a mask, whatever it is. And then talk about strategies to directly address the worry. So for example, for that kiddo that's really worried about running out of food, maybe you say, hey, I understand why you're worried. I was scared and worried too. And so what I did is I talked to somebody at the community center, and they told me about this other food pantry that we didn't know about. So on Monday, we can actually go to 2 different places and get food. And so we will definitely have enough food to get it through the week, right? We don't want to put our worries on our kids, but we do want them to realize, again, it's normal, right? This will be posted on the Spina Bifida Association's website. And again, more resources, and thanks so much. Take care. Have a great day.